So the point of this video is to go through how to use StatKey to do some of the computations in the pre-material. There are a couple of examples that I can use as a springboard for that from the worksheet that I gave out in the first lab last semester, which was maybe a little bit more focused toward the pre-material. So we have this data set here, which is the population densities of the boroughs of Alaska. And if we want to get the mean standard deviation of those, I mean, you can do it without StatKey, that's certainly true. You could use a calculator to do it. But the way that you would do it in StatKey, so if I go to StatKey, what you're going to want for anything like a mean or standard deviation, median, quartiles, that kind of stuff, it's this option right here, so one quantitative variable. So if I click on that, you can see what StatKey will give you over here. Right? I guess I can turn this on and make the numbers a little bit bigger. But all of these values over here are based on this preloaded data set about toenail arsenic. So the first thing is we got to get that out of there and get our data set in there, the Alaska boroughs. So if we go to edit data, I'm just going to dump all of this out. I'm not going to use a header. I think most people don't. So if you're not going to use a header, if you're just going to put in a list of numbers, uncheck this box. Because when it says data has header row, it automatically ignores the thing that's going to be in your first row. And if that's a number, that's something that you don't want. So I'll get rid of that. And then I already have the Alaska data right here. So I'm just going to copy this over and then paste it into StatKey. And all the stuff that we want is right over here. So we were asking about the mean and the standard deviation. There's the mean, 10.984. There's the standard deviation, 37.878. And then the median is part B, and that's 1.57. So it's pretty quick, right? If you needed the quartiles, they're right there too. Let's see. There is another one that I also wanted to bring up. So let's see. All right, so there's the Alaska one that's essentially taken care of now. With number 8, so one where you have to get the median and the quartiles. If you were going to do this by hand, which you certainly could, you'd have to put these values in order first. Then you could get the median, and then from there you could get the quartiles. So if you were going to do that one by hand, so there's all those numbers in order, those endowments. There are 8 of them, which is an even number, so to get the median you have to average the 2. They're the most central, so the 55 and the 70, that's what's happening there, right? You average those, you get 62.5. And then the quartiles, the first quartile should be the median of the lower half of the data set, so it's those first 4 numbers, right? So you're just averaging the 2 that are in the middle of those 4. Third quartile, same idea, except it's the median of the upper half. And then, I guess for completeness' sake, there's the outlier check. So the interquartile range is just the difference between the 2 outliers. And then the 2 boundaries for anything beyond this is going to be an outlier would be the first quartile minus 1.5 times the interquartile range, and then the third quartile plus 1.5 times the interquartile range. And there's nothing beyond either of those values, so there aren't going to be any outliers. Okay, the other thing that I wanted to point out has to do with this one. And this is really just if you're going to do it by hand. Oh, and I guess I got ahead of myself. Doing this one in StatKey, that's not going to be terribly difficult. So if I go back here, I'll have to go to Edit Data and get the Alaska data out of there. And I guess this time I'll leave the heading, just that word custom, and then there are the endowments. And there's the 62.5 that we had before, right? And there are the quartiles that we had before, the 27.5 and the 416.5. So you can do it in StatKey as well if you want to. With a small data set like that, doing it by hand might be worth it. I mean, that might actually be faster if the data set's less than 10 observations or so. So I guess you could certainly make the argument that doing this one by hand would make sense because there are only 7 numbers there. The thing that I want to point out is actually in the solutions. So getting the 5-number summary would be median, quartiles, max, and min. The max and min are going to be easy, right? Especially considering that those are in order already. So the max and min are on the ends. The median is right in the middle. It's the 2531. How to get the quartiles by hand here, that's the issue. This is a thing that can trip people up. So if you go to the if I go to the solutions for number 9, when you have an odd number of data points, there are a couple of different ways to handle the quartiles. One is, well, basically it's how do you handle that median, because either you would have it count as part of each half of the data set or neither half. What our book does, and so therefore what our homework does, is it counts the median as part of both halves. So if you look at what I've got down here for the first and third quartiles, I have the first quartile is the median of 1976 through 2531. So I'm including the 2531 there, but I'm also including it in the second half. So for the third quartile, where it's the median of 2531 through 6734, that's the way to handle it if you have an odd number of data points. If you use StatKey, StatKey will do it for you. But that's one that I wanted to point out, just if you're going to do it by hand, that's a thing that you have to watch out for. If you have an odd number of data points, that does feel a little bit weird that you replicate that overall median twice, but that's the way you have to do it to get the correct quartiles.